got the best coaches in the game. We really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block. Helmets, casket, and top.
All right, everybody, we're back with another DFS Army Bowl Call Fantasy Football Podcast, and I'm here with Rich Dotson from, the Rich Dotson. That's right, it's him. We have him here from Dynasty Nerds. Good morning, Rich. What's up, man?
Good morning. Good to be here live with you.
Yeah. Now, Rich, if you've played Dynasty Fantasy Football, you already know who Rich is. And if you don't, and you're interested with all the growing popularity of Dynasty Fantasy Football, you're in for a treat. And Rich, I asked all of our Dynasty guests this. It's like, what is your general Dynasty philosophy when you're in a startup? Like, are you a wide receiver first guy? Are you a running backs at all costs? Give me your general Dynasty philosophy.
Yeah, I have two things that I love to do in every draft, and that's grab at least two really young wide receivers and a stud tight end. Like, I want one of those good tight ends. I want a TJ Hawkinson. I want a Mark Andrews. I want a George Kittle. I want one of those guys that's going to give me an edge. And yeah, young receivers. And then I let the running backs fall to me, because usually in the startup you could find value later in a little bit of age veterans running backs, right? You can find the Melvin Gordons, you can find the Chris Carsons,
even David Johnson if you have to get by,
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go that far and be silly with it. But I still want to grab a good young running back. And what we've seen, I think, in the startup too, which is good about grabbing the young receivers, we've had such a good influx of youth at all positions, right? Running back and receiver. I think the running back class right now, the running back overall in Dynasty in the depth is deeper than it's ever been. So I don't think there's such an urgency to go up there and get, if I had to choose between having a Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey, obviously Christian McCaffrey is, the 1-1 in a redraft league. And in Dynasty rankings, I would have, Christian McCaffrey higher. But if I'm going to do a startup, I would honestly really prefer to get in the back end of the first and get a Justin Jefferson. Now it all depends, because I don't like to pigeonhole myself as well in startups. I want to make sure, because every draft is different, right? You gotta let the draft come to you. Where's the value? I want to get good value. I want to get quality players. So in the back of the first, I would love to get Jonathan Taylor and Justin Jefferson, right? So that goes against my young receiver strategy. But I know there's been such a big influx of talented young receivers that I can get two receivers coming back, or TJ Hawkinson and then a young receiver coming back. So I want to make sure I get one good quality running back, and then I want to get a lot of young, talented players on there and grab those savvy vets where it is, because I'm trying to build a young foundation, but I'm also trying to win. I think it's a big thing in Dynasty and what we promote at Dynasty Nerds. And unfortunately, you see other people that don't do this in the community because they're really into draft picks and draft value. Like, I know a site that they put all their value in rookie picks, and it's like, I'm trying to win. We play to win. It's like, I've been playing Dynasty for a very long time, and I've heard so many people say, oh, this team looks so good on paper. This team looks so good on paper. In 3 years, this team's going to be studly. Never works. Never works. There's injuries. There are guys that don't pan out altogether. So in other league, and the rest of your league is churning along, right? And that's what we see after a Dynasty league has been formed for 3 to 4 years. Like, the foundations really change. You have the bottom teams, you have the top teams, and you have the teams that are confused that are stuck in the middle.
Yeah, that's a perfect lead into what I wanted to ask you. A trendy Dynasty strategy is the productive struggle. You hear about it a lot on Twitter. I'm not cut out for it. Why don't you explain it and then talk about any merit that it has?
The productive struggle?
Yeah, where you're just getting all young guys, all young picks. You're punting win now guys, and then you're always playing for next year. Like, you're loading up on these second year guys that failed, the Henry Ruggs types and the Jalen Reagor that you're trading for all these guys. You're going to struggle, right? But you're always playing for the future. I mean, again, I'm not cut out for that. I don't have the stomach for it. I'm always in win now.
It depends. There's a time and a place, right? There's a time and place. It's never a time and a place in a startup. Never. Because you're not playing for the future. You're playing to build a foundation that can win now and for the future, right? That's the strategy. Not to just punt for the future. This is a startup. You want to play for now and the future. So, but there's times that you have to realize, like, when you're playing Dynasty, there's only two places to be, the bottom and the top. That's it. You never want to be in the middle, because it doesn't get you anywhere. And you get stagnant. You're just missing out on the high-end players, and you're never getting the money. You're never getting to the playoffs, or if you do get in the playoffs, you're first eliminated. So there's a time to grab draft picks in youth, and that's when you blow it up. But you're not blowing it up in year one. You're trying to win year one. there's a strategy involved when you're startup. You want to make sure you take, like I said before, you want to make sure you grab those savvy vets where they're available, right? There's value in some 30-year-old. There's value in Tom Brady. Tom Brady's going to slip at quarterback, but he's going to give you QB1 numbers this year and probably next year. So while everybody else wants those young quarterbacks, there's a strategy if you want to go youth. If you're going to go young in a startup, right? You're going to grab the guy who needs to prove himself. Make sure you back him up with a vet that's gonna fill that slot for at least a year or two while he is developing, because that way if he whiffs, at least you have a replacement, right? If you're going to draft a guy like Joe Burrow who's come up the leg injury and he's your quarterback one, grab a Tom Brady to back him up, right? If you love Justin Fields and he's in your startup draft, like this is my quarterback of the future, I'm set, it looks good on paper, grab a Tom Brady to back him up, grab a Matt Ryan to back him up, grab a Kirk Cousins even to back him up. Just grab somebody, just make sure you're trying to win. That's the best point in the startup. It's okay to try and build your team around young players, which I do too. In my first 7 picks, I want them to all be under the age of 28. But after that, make sure you're filling holes to win with some veterans that will give you some time and some production. Because remember, it's all about winning. Sometimes when you're playing and you get late in the years and multiple years, sometimes you got to lose a trade, because so many people don't want to lose trades, right? So if you put a trade on Twitter, oh, you lost that trade, you're not going to win that trade. But like, this trade helps my team win now. You know what I mean? I always tell people, I'm trying to win ships. I'm not trying to win trades all the time. So sometimes you have to lose a trade, and that's okay if you're going to win a championship, because championships live forever. Nobody cares about second place. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's going to go around and say, hey, I came in second place 6 years in a row. Oh, good. You're a 6-year loser. Way to go, buddy.
What do you think the most common mistake people make, even experienced drafters in dynasty startup drafts? I mean, I've heard you say that, hey, we all end up saying, hey, if I just got one more chance to get it right, I would get it right. I mean, I was laughing my ass off when I heard you say that, because it's like you're inside my head. So what do you think are some of the most common mistakes people make in dynasty startups?
When you start to reach for need, and there's a clearly better player on the board, you're like, oh man, I took Rich's advice. I started grabbing these young receivers. Now all the running backs are gone. Oh, what am I going to do? And the best running back available is David Johnson. But then David Johnson on the board, but so is Jerry Jeudy. And you're like, I'm taking David Johnson because I need a running back, right? And it's like, once you start, and the same thing can be said year after year, not even a startup, year after year in rookie drafts, where you reach for need instead of taking the best player available. Now there's tiers, right? So just because you have rankings are better off broken down into tiers if you had them overall. Because people are like, oh, you have Cam Akers right behind Antonio Gibson. What's wrong with you? I'm like, I literally have him one spot behind Cam Akers. It just means if I had to pick one or the other, I'm taking Antonio Gibson. Just my personal preference, right? Like, doesn't mean I don't like Cam Akers. People sometimes, like, if you have a guy ranked right ahead of him, they'll be like, oh, you don't like him. It's like, no, I like him. They're the same tier. But if you put a gun to my head, that's who I'm taking, right? So always take the best player available. Why do you take the best player available? Because then when you take the best player available, they have a higher chance of success. And if they pan out, now you can take that player that panned out and trade for need. And now you're taking a guessing out of it, right? You're taking that player, you're trading for somebody who's proven. That's why, like in super flex drafts, I always say take the quarterback, rookie quarterback. And no matter how tempting that running back is, no matter how tempting that wide receiver is. Now, sometimes, again, it's all about situation, because maybe you traded for that pick, or maybe you had a lot of injuries, and all you need is that running back to compete. And Najee Harris is there. And you're sitting at 1-3, and you're between Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, or Trey Lance, and Najee Harris. But if you draft Najee Harris, you can win. You can make that move because, again, you're trying to win your league. But the quarterback's probably going to take some time to develop. But the reason you take the quarterback is quarterbacks in Superflex are worth their weight in gold. So maybe they pan out, maybe they don't. But if they do pan out, you're getting any player you want, right? Right now, Justin Herbert, he went behind, maybe in the startup, Justin Jefferson. You could trade Justin Herbert in the startup for Justin Jefferson plus. You could take Justin Herbert in a super flex league right now and trade him for almost anybody that you want. And he's a proven player. And last year, I was preaching, take Justin Herbert at 3, no matter what. The upside's there. You got to take him. And some people are like, oh, no, you can't take Justin Herbert over Jonathan Taylor. You can't take Justin Herbert over this guy. If you want Jonathan Taylor right now for Justin Herbert, you could get him.
Then some. And then
probably
some.
then some, most likely. So always take the best player. So even in the startups, like I'm saying, if you start to reach, that's where you could really set your dynasty team in a startup back. Because sometimes you just got to take the L. You're like, you know what? I'm just going to take the best player during the startup draft. And a lot of startup drafts are happening now, right? Okay, I missed on receiver, right? So, or you miss on running back, which is my number one miss usually because I'm always drafting these young receivers and whatnot. Man, I'm real shallow at running back. You have 5 to 6 months to figure that running back situation out. You have future draft picks to figure that situation out. So, and what's the most fluid position in fantasy football? It's a running back. So there's plenty of guys you could figure out and make moves for later to fill that position. It's why I put the running back on the side and the afterburner, because it's the most fluid position in all football. We did a show on our Dynasty Nerds podcast. If your listeners want to look it up, it's about running back ones and how often you can be a running back one. And the odds of your running back one ever being a running back one again are under 17% of his life, of his entire career. Yeah. So if
we actually we use that podcast, the one that you're talking about. And again, I'm here with Rich Dotson from Dynasty Nerds. Go check them out. Become a NerdHerd member. We are over here at DFSARMY. We're NerdHerd members. We listen to the premium podcast. We check out Rich's rankings just to make sure we're sane when we're doing ours. He's one of the guys that we go to. And that specific podcast you were talking about was data that we used to educate our listeners. And again, this is the guy right here. And go over to Dynasty Nerds. And also, let's take a second here to tell them about the Dynasty GM tool, which I love this tool. I think it's unbelievable. And if you are a Dynasty Fantasy Football player, Rich, give them the elevator pitch on Dynasty GM. Yeah,
the Dynasty GM to me is like the best tool in the market. Like if you had it from day one, where it is 6 months later is night and day. It's an ever developing tool as well. The best thing I say is we just put a YouTube video out about explaining what the Dynasty GM is. And it's a detailed video showing you everything it does visually. So you can see what it does. It's absolutely free to try. If you go to dynastynerds.com right now, there's a free 3-day trial. No strings attached. Not like you put in your credit card and got to cancel. It's literally free to try. But basically, it's like if you're in more than one Dynasty league, this helps streamline your Dynasty leagues. And what it also does is, we have the trade calculator. We have your player shares. We have the rookie draft board. We have the league rankings, but we also have the league analyzer. So it's easy to go into a league and say, oh man, I need wide receiver help. And then you got to go scroll through all the teams to see who has the most wide receivers. And you get to the 11th team and you're like, wait, what team had the best wide receivers? You got to go back. So we visually chart it with graphs everywhere. So we're like, hey, you're really strong at running back. This team over here is really weak at running back, and they're really strong at wide receiver, and you're weak at wide receiver. So it helps generate trades. So it really streamlines all your Dynasty leagues, and it helps you make the best decisions possible for your Dynasty league. We have so many tools in there to just visually look at all your leagues in one place. It's literally all your leagues are in one place, whether you play FFPC, Sleeper, My Fantasy League, Flea Flicker. If you want to manually import your leagues, they're all right there. It looks really clean, and it streamlines all that league. You're literally going to go from one league to another by click. If you want to see, hey, this guy's a free agent. Do I have him? You click on your league player shares. Okay, I have Kenyon Drake who signs with the Raiders in this many leagues. Okay, how many or I have Josh Jacobs in this many leagues, or who has now all of a sudden say I want to see who has Kenyon Drake. I click on Kenyon Drake. It shows every league I'm in who owns Kenyon Drake. And then on the bottom, there's a trade button. Boom, I hit trade. And what's nice about our trade calculator is we have 2 trade calculators. One that just builds your own trade, and another one it's already set to your league.
That's what I like the best, is because these trade calculators, they don't account for like the real life. Like when people send a trade calculator to me, I'm like, this has nothing to do with our league. That's what I like about your version of it. It imports your league's scoring system.
Yeah. So our trade calculator, if you go within your league to trade, or if you look at trades within your league, it literally calculates it from your league scoring format. And then you just click on the teams that you want to trade with, and all their assets are right there. So you're not going to I got to look for players. They're all right there. So again, what we want to do is just simplify the game of Dynasty, right? It's the more leagues you get in, the more time it takes. So we want to come up with a way to make it as easy as possible, because we want to grow the game of Dynasty. So to do that is to make it as simple as possible for people to play. And the Dynasty GM gives you that opportunity to make it simple. And that's why you make it free, just to show people how nice this tool is. And
it's one of those things. It's when they use it, they're going to sign up for it. I mean, when I first became a member, it was like, if you bought an annual, it was only like $3 or $5 a month. I mean, I don't know what you guys are charging for it now on an annual basis. Yeah. So it's a no brainer. I mean, I spend more on coffee, in a day. So my question to you though, is that, you're passionate about Dynasty. I am passionate about Dynasty. That's why I love your podcast so much, because you guys are talking about it like you're talking about solving world peace. And why do you think that Dynasty is the fastest growing, even though it's still considered a niche format? I don't think it's long before it's going to be the mainstream format. What do you attribute that it's the fastest growing format in all of fantasy sports?
I mean, there's a couple of things. One, the NFL draft is huge, right? Drafting, it's like, oh, you should have taken this pick. And the sense of like when you draft a good team, you get to keep it forever. Because like there's a lot of self-pride in Dynasty because you build it, right? You do everything's hands-on. So you get to build that for the long term. And you're going to see players that you believe in. You grow these attachment to players, right? Like I had literally had Drew Brees on my team for 17 years on my Dynasty team. So like Drew Brees is one of my all-time favorite quarterbers. I owned him. I don't own him, but I had him on my roster for 17 years.
I know you're not allowed to say that anymore. You're not. You're just going to say I roster him. I hear you.
I think the big thing too is camaraderie.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's no game out there in fantasy sports that builds a sense of camaraderie like a Dynasty team. Like every Dynasty league, we have a group meet chat, right? So there's constant talk, right? There's trades. It's literally all year long at your fingertips whenever you want to do it in the offseason. Hey guys, I want to make a trade. You're constantly making moves. So you're constantly involved, right? It's like those little games that get you that you're playing every day. You got to do something with. That's what Dynasty is. It just gets you in there. You're talking, you're making new friends. I mean, I got people that I talk to all the time that I've never seen their face.
Remember, you and I were talking about this before I pushed the go live button, is that I have become like friendly with people that I now text with that I've never met because of Dynasty Fantasy Football. The Sleeper app is basically a social media app. Oh yeah, and you happen to play Dynasty Fantasy Football on it. I mean, it's amazing. So I think that really keys into what you were talking about. It's that camaraderie, it's that love of football, and it's that next level experience. I mean, let's face it, redraft becomes a little bit monotonous. Like, oh, okay, what's the ADP? I'll take this guy. And when you look at Dynasty Startups, the ADP is in fact, when I start doing my redraft leagues, because I still like to do a couple, I have to like get out of the Dynasty Startup mindset. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
And in regular leagues, by week 7, your team's 0-6. You're out of it. You're no longer in love with it. You want to get out of it. Where Dynasty, it's like, ooh, I got to keep the streak going. I'm trying to get Trevor Lawrence. I want to keep losing, right? Like, so it's always engaged. It's never not engaging. In season, it's engaging. Off season, it's engaging. April, the NFL draft, you're like, who's going where? What's going on? And then you have your rookie draft. So you're having 2 drafts and it's nonstop. I love it. I said the camaraderie, the friendships, like as a Dynasty site owner, I get to interact with a lot of these other podcast hosts. Site owners, like the Midwest Expos come up in Akron, and I got guys that I'm really excited I've never met that are coming here to Ohio that I will be able to see. Like I'm literally going to throw a pool party at my house and a barbecue for a lot of these guys I'll be able to see and meet for the first time that I literally consider my friends.
Yeah, no, that definitely says it all. Now I want to, a lot of the questions I've asked you so far about basic strategy, but you had mentioned Justin Jefferson earlier and how he is a defensible first round Dynasty pick, but in the $750 maiden Dynasty on the FFPC, I monitored some of the drafts that went off. He just went 4th overall. This eerily reminds me of when Juju Smith-Schuster was being talked about as the 1-1 after his first big breakout year. Is that a dangerous pick as a top 5? I mean, I obviously see the upside, but do you see the connection that I'm trying to talk about between Juju and him?
Yeah, I do, because I think there's a good connection here because some people do make silly moves and some people make smart moves. And I think those are 2 completely different things, because we had Justin Jefferson ranked accordingly. Like my co-host had him the second best receiver coming out. And when they come out and do that on tape, you're like, yes, see, there it is. This is what I saw on tape in college of what he could be. This could be his ceiling. And he goes out and does it, right? Where Juju, completely different, is he came out and did it, and we didn't love his tape as much. Right. Like we were actually down on Juju in the draft. We didn't think it was the worst, but we didn't think he was that great. And to be honest with you, he was only done it for like a year and a half, really. Didn't do much last year, was okay. The year before that, without Big Ben, ran some bad routes, had some drops. So I think about when you make moves like that, it depends. Like it depends how much research you did. If you overreact on one player doing something good for 1 year and that's all you're basing it on, then that's a bad overreaction. But if you put in the time in Dynasty and you scout these players during their rookie draft and they get to the NFL and then they do it and they show you what their ceiling could be, then I'm okay with it. I like Justin Jefferson because I loved what I saw on tape out of him coming out of college. And then he came out and did it in the NFL as well. So he's shown me that what I saw on tape in college can translate to the NFL and translate at a high level. So for me, taking him as 4th overall, a 21-year-old rookie just put up 1,400 receiving yards in Minnesota with Adam Thielen, who's over the age of 30. And to me, I'm okay with that because that's how I want to build my franchise. Like, would I take a 1-4? Maybe not. but I'm not arguing. It's not too far behind it. Let me put it that way. So he's in that tier, I guess is what I would say. Because I'm okay with that because I have Justin Jefferson, who's a wide receiver 1 already, who I think will be a wide receiver 1 for many years to come at 21. So I just filled a roster spot on my Dynasty roster for the next 5 to 10 years that I don't have to touch that I'm going to get high production out of. Compared to, in the counterpoint, like, well, how do you take him over a guy like Devontae Adams? How do you take him over DeAndre Hopkins? Well, they're 28. That's a 7-year differential on their point production. And honestly, if I'm getting 1,400 yards, Devontae Adams might be wide receiver 1, but the points per game differential is 2. So I'll lose on those 2 points differential for the next 3 years. But for the next 7 years after that, I'm going to still be getting that consistent double-digit points. So I think going back to the question is between Juju and Justin Jefferson is, how do you play Dynasty? What kind of time do you put into it? Because it's a game that the more time you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. So the less time you put into it, you're going to be, okay, I'm taking Juju high because he was just a wide receiver 1. You know what I mean? And he did it early. But what are you basing it off of? You're only doing it, you're based off that what he did that 1 year. Where's the track record on it? There's no track record to show that that's going to be consistent. We haven't seen it since. So for me, I'm okay with Justin Jefferson because I put the time in on Justin Jefferson beforehand, and he's shown me what I need to see. Juju still got to show it to me. The Steelers, we don't know where Juju's going to sign. Maybe he resigns with Steelers. Maybe he doesn't. But if he does sign with the Steelers, Big Ben's a little washed there. Chase Claypool is a better receiver in my eyes right now than Juju Smith. Deontay Johnson, Juju, they're pretty close to me in the same eyes. They both got, Deontay's got to clean up some of those drop issues. So, again, it's just about what time you put into it. You just got to make the right decisions at the right time by what you think is best. What do you see in your research?
So every year there are Hall of Fame fantasy players that have a down year that are still relatively in their peak and then get pushed down the board. This year it's Michael Thomas and Zeke Elliott. Now, those guys are getting completely disrespected in these startup drafts going in the 3rd round. Now, I guess you could talk to them specifically, but when you're talking about Hall of Fame dynasty players, that Zeke 25 going on 26, Michael Thomas 28 years old, these are peak production players. How do you generally treat the Hall of Fame trajectory guys that have the down year?
Well, running backs are the easiest one for me to set aside because I'm always trying to trade running backs when they go into their second contract. So I'm okay with it. I got some heck from another site because I just made a big move for Ezekiel Elliott in my high stakes league because I'm trying to win that league this year. Right. And I gave up a lot for Ezekiel Elliott, but I got Justin Herbert back too, which I feel comfortable with. So running back, again, it comes back to where's the value? Where's the upside? The upside to Zeke is when he had Dak Prescott behind center, he scored over 20 points per game. Without Dak, it fell apart. The offensive line was beat up. All the weapons are there. It's easy to stack the box for Zeke. He didn't look that good. Maybe he was a little bit, not into the game as much. Maybe he's not. But the upside's still there in Zeke because he's only 25 years old. Michael Thomas. They put Taysom Hill in. When Taysom Hill came in, everybody took a hit, right? So, if you're down on Michael Thomas, are you down on Alvin Kamara? Now, he came back later in the year, but so did Drew Brees. So, again, it just comes about what's the position, what's the history of this, right? What's the player? What's the injury? Why was he down? If you did the research, Michael Thomas, even though he came back, was still banged up last year as well. He was still doing some injuries, but Michael Thomas is still a really good receiver. Yeah. Now that Jameis Winston's coming in there, that's going to – if Jameis Winston starts, I still like Michael Thomas. If Taysom Hill starts, I don't like Michael Thomas as much, but he's 28. So he's reached that threshold of, okay – he's taking a step back. I don't think it's just because of what he did last year, but he lost Drew Brees and he's 28 years old. So he's starting to get over that threshold of where's the value?
He's in that area now where each year he's going to lose liquidity. He's going to lose trade value each year. He's one of those guys that he's going to be on your roster. If you draft him this year, the chances are he's going to die on your roster unless you sell at a discount.
He's a championship player now. That's what he is. So you get certain parts, and certain players should only be on championship caliber teams. That's it. Right. Players hit a certain mark, and they should only be on rosters for teams that compete. That's it.
What's funny is then those guys like Michael Thomas, then they go into a phase of their career where they're buys. Like a Julio Jones now, to me, is back to being a buy because you're getting him for a late 2nd round pick, or a second round 2.5 or whatever it is. So he goes from sell to hold to buy. So that really is my next question. A leak in and I consider myself a good dynasty player. I've won dynasty championships in medium stakes league, nothing, crazy, but a leak in my game. And I think a superpower that Dynasty Nerds has is you're able to suspend recency bias and look what the value is going to be in 12 to 18 months. What is the secret recipe to figuring that out?
I think it's just from a very long experience of playing Dynasty. When I started playing Dynasty, there's no websites. There's nothing like that. Like we just figured it out ourselves and made up the rules. It's funny, like a lot of the rules that we made up ourselves became industry standard. Suppose I'm not saying because of us, it's just the way it worked out. But it's just it's like anything. They say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. It's just experience. You know what I mean? It takes times. Like we go back to how we started the show. Like when you do a startup, you want to do another one because like, oh, if I would have just done this, I could have done it better. So
right.
It's just experience, and it's kind of learning trends. Like again, what I don't like to do is make instant reactions because I have a lot of history of knowing that the instant reaction usually fails. Right? Like I'm a prove it kind of guy. So like when DK Metcalf has a huge year, but I didn't overly love his tape. Like I still moved DK Metcalf up my ranks, but he's still not my wide receiver one. I would still prefer Justin Jefferson over DK Metcalf. And some people are like, oh, you're crazy. Okay, that's fine, but I'd rather be safe than sorry, right? And what's the points per game differential here as well? Where's the boom and bust differential? So I think the big thing is have all that in mind, right? Where's my team at now? Where is this player going to be now and 12 months from now? Where's the upside? Where's the downside? There's a lot of consideration when you're making a move in dynasty leagues. You know what I mean? That you got to see what's best for your team. What's best? How does this player fit my team? And what's his long-term payoff? Because sometimes you're not looking for long-term payoff. You're trying to win. Sometimes you're looking for long-term playoff. So every move for every team and every player is different. It's the hardest reason the judge trades on Twitter because you don't know the backstory of
the
it,
team context,
or the team context of it, or who else they have on their roster. Right? When I get Zeke, it's like, wow, you gave up a lot. Okay, my team should have won last year if I would have started Baker Mayfield over whoever the hell I would have started him. I would have won my high stakes league. I would have won a lot of money, right? And I made one bad move, but now I have Alvin Kamara and I can put Zeke with him. And if Zeke pans out with Dak Prescott, I'm going to win that league. That's what I feel like, at least. So everything's different there. It's just. So when you think about long term, it's like any league. Don't overreact and think about where the value is and what's the long term production and how does this fit my team. And just not only how does it work, how does it hurt me as well? Pros, cons.
Yep. I'm here with Rich Dotson from Dynasty Nerds. Go check them out over at dynastynerds.com. Check out their rankings. Sign up, become a NerdHerd member. You get their premium podcast. I'm a listener over at DFS Army. We are listeners. When we form our Dynasty rankings, because I do the Dynasty rankings over there, is after I'm done, I go back and I click on Rich's rankings and I do a sanity check. I said, okay, where am I at? And I use them and I use a couple other guys to really calibrate my brain. And if I'm outside of those, so go over to the source, go check out Rich's rankings. Hey, Rich, do you do that? I mean, I'm sure at this point you're just kind of in a zone, but who's the sanity check for you? Is it Matt or Garrett or any of those guys? Or is there anyone outside of Dynasty Nerds that you like just to, peek out their rankings and or their philosophy and just see where you're at versus the market?
No, there's nobody else outside of Dynasty Nerds I even peek at. I use Matt and Garrett, my podcast hosts, as reality checks.
I hope you don't mind that I check yours.
No, that's fine. No, that's a good way to, honestly, that's how I do like redraft. I don't really look at anybody else's rankings over say, but I listen to the community on Twitter. You know what I mean? I listen to everybody who says ADP because sometimes it's like, it does it injustice if I don't like a player at all, right? To move them way down just because I don't like them because I'm not doing it right. Just because I don't like them doesn't mean I'm always right. I'm never going to be always right. I'm going to tell you to start a player, make a trade. I'm not going to always be right. I make moves. I'm not always right. So what I try to do is I come with my own analysis and then I go off of that. And then I let my other people that I respect, which is usually the people right by me in my inner circle. I let them sway me a little bit, or I go on a guest show and somebody might sway me a little bit. I'll see a lot of information on Twitter as well. There's a lot of guys out there who are respecting the market today, and that do Dynasty. I mean, there's guys like Ray Garvin, Ryan McDowell, Michael. There's guys out there that aren't a part of Dynasty Nerds that I respect their opinions. And at the same time, I'll use that to make moves where I use the market like, hey, they're all going this way. I'm selling because the market's going this way. Like last year, we're like sell Miles Sanders, a player that I loved coming out, but the value was just too high. The value was too high. Like he was never going to maintain that value. So I said sell. So I try to, again, I just try to keep everything simple for me. I don't try. What's real funny is I don't listen to other Dynasty podcasts ever. And the reason I don't do that is because I don't ever want to be influenced or swayed by what other people are talking about. I don't want to be like, well, oh, they did this and you did this. I don't know why I do that, but like, I want everything.
And that's a
genuine.
powerful thing. Like I hate ADP in redraft season because I form my rankings. Like I'll do my redraft rankings now. So when the ADP comes out, because when you're in that draft room, ADP does influence you, whether you like it or not. So it's important, like that you said, that you form your rankings in, I guess it's in a cylinder, and then you don't want those powerful outside forces because we can't help it sometimes,
Yeah, you use a percentage of it saying, what if I'm wrong, right? Like, what if, okay, I don't love this guy, but like it's unfair to my subscribers to rank him any lower. You know what I mean? But like, I think they'll get the point here where I have him. You know, like for a while I had Derrick Henry a lot lower than everybody else in the community, and I didn't like him. And
you were right. You were right until you were wrong, right? I mean, that's what Dynasty is. You're right until you're wrong, until you're right again, until you're wrong again.
And that's the thing. People are like, oh, you were wrong about Derrick Henry.
No, you weren't.
But was I? Because he was a turd for 3.5 years. Right. Like he didn't do anything for 3.5 years. So I was right on Derrick Henry for the get-go.
Yeah.
And then he turned into the stud that he is. So he figured it out, which some players figure it out. You know what I mean? And that's okay. And people are like, oh, you were wrong. I have no problem being wrong whatsoever. I have no problem being wrong. I'll never be right 100%.
Adding 750. That's the Dynasty Nerds motto, right?
That's what I want to do. I just want to be right more than I'm wrong. If I'm right 75% of the time, then I'm doing a hell of a job and I'm helping my listeners.
Right. Just think about a sports gambler. If you were right 75% of the time, you would be the richest man on the planet Earth. I promised Rich Dotson that I would get him out of here in a half hour. But Rich, I only have you for a limited amount of time. I have to ask some questions because, you know, when I listen to your podcast, sometimes I want to scream into the podcast and ask you guys questions. I mean, that's the reason I started my podcast, because I'm the opposite of you. I listen to hundreds of podcasts a week. I mean, I'm exaggeration for clarification, but I like to consume all content. I like it for entertainment. And you guys take flack for being high on your Cleveland Browns. I know that, but I understand when you guys say that we're not homers, that we have good valuations. My question is about Baker Mayfield specifically. You have him as your quarterback 8 in Superflex. I need because I went in on Baker Mayfield and I was influenced by you guys. So please tell me why Baker Mayfield is still a top 8 Superflex Dynasty quarterback.
Okay, a couple things on this before we get into Baker Mayfield, just real quick.
Okay, all right.
One, going back to how you listen to a lot of podcasts, that's what everybody should do. You should get as much information as podcasts. You said you look at my rankings, you use it, other people rankings. That's a great thing to do in Dynasty, right? Like I own a Dynasty website. I'm a very I'm few and far between. So like I have to go off of what I say, but everybody else should look at multiple rankings to make sure they're in line, right? Like they're not doing anything crazy. And they're not making a total decision. Because if you find a couple of people that you respect, that's how I scout, right? Like I read a couple of scouting reports of people that I respect personally, and I trust them to help. That way, if I miss something, I can go back and look at it, right? So you should everybody should do that. They should listen to multiple podcasts, look at multiple rankings, and then help them guide their decision, not just make that decision. Second thing I want to say is people always say, you're Cleveland Browns biased. You're Cleveland Browns biased. The only person I'm biased against is Baker Mayfield. Okay. That is it. We're never Nick Chubb's not my number one dynasty ranked running back.
You guys have Odell high still, and again for good reason though. The upside's there.
He's not even that high, but he's not that. I don't even have Odell that high. Look at all the
relative to market. Relative to market.
Maybe I do.
Yeah,
maybe I do.
Relative to market. That's all I meant. Obviously, you don't have him as wide receiver 25. You have, but relative to market.
I would never, ever rank somebody higher because they're a Cleveland Brown. I would never do that.
And sharp dynasty players get that. I mean, your credibility speaks for itself. I was kind of just bringing up a running joke.
No, I hear that. No, it is a running joke. I hear it sometimes. They're Cleveland Browns. I have Zach Wilson, I have Justin Fields. What are you talking about? For Ohio State. So
yes,
I just want to say that because I do hear that sometimes.
Fair enough. Fair. Well, you know what happened is now that you appeal to not just the dynasty community, you have mainstream appeal, you're going to get people that say that. It's just what happens.
Well, people just like to bitch. But going back to Baker Mayfield. So now, of course, I love Baker Mayfield. I mean, we got Baker Mayfield on the wall up there.
Look at that beautiful piece of art.
I love him. Now, let me go. The backtrack on Baker Mayfield is I love Baker Mayfield before he even got drafted by the Cleveland Browns. I think I said on the podcast, the Browns are probably going to draft Sam Darnold, but they should draft Baker Mayfield. He's one of the. When I was talking about Baker, he was one of the best quarterbacks that I scouted ever in my life at the time. I loved him that much. So I was even here in Cleveland before we drafted him. We got to draft Baker. This kid is unbelievable. So why should you draft Baker Mayfield as a top 8 asset, right? Baker Mayfield has had some really bad coaching and really bad offensive coordinators up to this point. Kevin Stefanski came in, won Coach of the Year, and showed that they got Kevin Stefanski because his offense fits Baker Mayfield to the T. And what we saw at the second half of the season, Baker Mayfield was quarterback 7 overall. Then the stretch, he was the quarterback's number 7 overall. Now Baker is going to enter his second year in the same system that we saw he got on fire with last year. He has a very strong running game. He has a very good offensive line. One of the best running games in the NFL, one of the best offensive line in the NFL. That offense is very efficient. He has two really good weapons in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. He's got some really good tight ends there as well. So he's got some good weapons there to go around him. So he has his system produced. And he's in a system that's going to highlight his skill set, which is going to produce what QB1 numbers. A good example, Ryan Tannehill, right? Ryan Tannehill is not a fancy name, but that offense suits him to a T. He has a good offensive line. He has a really strong running game. Last year, Ryan Tannehill was quarterback number 7 overall. And the year before that, he was quarterback number 8 overall because that offense suits him to a T.
He was a QB2 on a lot of fantasy championship teams, meaning he was your super flex starter.
100%. So you're getting Baker Mayfield, a 25-year-old, a 26. I think it's about 26 somewhere.
Yeah, 25 going on 26.
6 somewhere around there now. Yeah. So you're getting a young quarterback in your dynasty team that I think for the future will be a top 8 fantasy football asset. Because what I like about a quarterback, I like them to be very smart and accurate. And when Baker Mayfield's on the field, he's a very accurate quarterback. It's why Drew Brees had a lot of success. It's why Peyton Manning had success. I don't care how far a quarterback can throw because most throws are under 20 yards. I want my quarterback to be very accurate, and that is his highlight there. So I absolutely love Baker Mayfield. But to be fair, I would have loved Baker Mayfield if he wasn't on the Browns. I see a lot of Baker Mayfield and Zach Wilson this year. So now I'm a big Zach Wilson fan too. I was declaring myself the Daniel Jones president of his fan club because everybody was hating on him. So I wanted to be on him too.
Because of your podcast, you guys were pushing Daniel Jones. I was getting him in Superflex in the 2.3, 2.4, which obviously proved to be. I mean, I think that's before even sharp drafters understood the importance of quarterbacks in these leagues. So it's now everyone gets it. You'll see in these startup drafts where the quarterbacks go 1 through 8 right off the start. That wasn't the case. Even last year, it was all running backs in the first round, with the exception of Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Rich, I promised you. Look, I have pages and pages of questions for you. We'll have to bring you back, but just
anytime.
Yeah, just one question for you, because I was recently participated in a mock draft with Roster Watch and a bunch of other guys in the Dynasty spot. And in a 1 quarterback mock draft at pick 7, I took Trevor Lawrence. And I was skewered for that pick. I mean, I was laughed out of the room in a 1 quarterback rookie draft, right? Is that a defense? I still stand by that. That's a defensible pick, taking Trevor Lawrence in a 1 QB league. Now, I know team context, all that, but if you're talking about taking the best player available, what's the earliest you would take Trevor Lawrence in a 1 QB format?
We're around there, 1.6, 1.7 in 1 QB. If I want a quarterback, if my quarterbacks are older or they're just not, if I have
Roethlisberger, you have Roethlisberger and Daniel Jones.
Yeah, 100%. I'm totally okay with taking Trevor Lawrence there because I'm getting somebody who everybody considers a generational talent. Anytime we talk about generational talent quarterbacks, they almost always work out, always. So you're going to get a guy who's going to be a high-end quarterback for the next 15 years on your roster, and you just fill the position you don't have to worry about. And yeah, you might miss out on the running back or the receiver, but in 10 years, you won't even remember who that name was that you missed out on. So you're getting almost as close as it gets to a for sure thing there. Like he's pretty much Kyle Pitts and Trevor Lawrence are like for sure things. So I have no problem with that whatsoever because it's making your dynasty team better. If you do something that's going to make your dynasty team significantly better, it's never a bad move. And yeah, maybe you could have got, maybe it was last year and Justin Jefferson 1.8, right? And you missed out on Jefferson.
That's the exception, though. That's not the rule.
It's an outliers. And too many times people want to use outliers as like examples. I hate doing that as well. So I have no problem if you need a quarterback, again, one of the best one that has come out in 10 years to put on your roster forever. I have no problem with that whatsoever because even in 1 QB leagues, the quarterbacks are still the highest scoring players. It's just there's more of them. That's all, and they're easier to get. But it's still a hard time to get. Even in a 1 QB league, go ahead and try and trade for Justin Herbert, right? Like go ahead and try and trade for that guy. They're still hard to get the really good ones. Go ahead and try and trade for Pat Mahomes in a 1 QB league. Yeah, it's good luck with that.
Yeah, and there's only a handful of guys you can trade for in these 1 QB leagues. So
it's not a bad move at all. Alan. You're making your dynasty team better. So how is somebody gonna say it's a bad move? And nothing's worse than ragging on somebody like they know. I hate people like definitely on Twitter because my always answer when people are like, oh, like you're wrong and this is what's gonna happen. Like, well, I guess we're gonna find out, right? Like one of us will be right, one of us wrong, and we're gonna find out. Like, don't need to get Like, I just hate people that like talk a matter of factly to you. Like
yes,
I'm the one with the crystal balls. I have crystal balls.
That's right. The crystal ball is a signature of your show. Now, the funny thing is because I thought I was making a sharp pick, and then not only was it treated as a donkey pick, I was laughed out of the room. I was shocked at it. So it's good to hear someone with your experience level and your acumen is defending the pick. I don't know if you're being nice or not, but no.
I think we said on the Dynasty Nerd show when we were breaking down on rookie quarterbacks, we talked about in one QB league, the highest we take him is right around 1.6, 1.7, right around there, because that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because anything else higher, you probably could have you could probably make a move and then trade for a quarterback with one of those players, or you could better your team. Because sometimes what you do is a good move in Dynasty too is you draft for a young guy is you draft a good player there, and then you trade the veteran that you have or the prove it. You trade that guy. Like, so if I draft Najee Harris, I have an influx of running backs, but Najee Harris's value is less, and I believe in Najee Harris, then I'm gonna trade Christian McCaffrey for way more. You know what I mean? So it's like you trade the better player and get more, and you take the player that you think will get there. I guess, does that make sense? Like,
100%. Yeah. And that's why I love having you on, Rich. It's, anyone can talk about which player's hot, which player's not. And I love doing that too, but your dynasty philosophy, your dynasty strategy is really what sets you apart. And I highly recommend, if you're watching this, the DFS Army, I know you guys all will, go over and check out dynastynerds.com, become a NerdHerd member over there. It's only a few bucks a month. And not only do you get their podcast that comes out weekly, you get their premium podcast. You get to check out all their tools and their rankings. It's a fun site, and they have a lot of great writers over there, great articles. Anything I'm missing on that, Rich?
Yeah, the film room, man.
It's on my list to ask you about.
It's probably the number one thing we got. Not the number one thing, but
it's my
in
favorite
industry.
Tool.
It's in the industry wise, like everybody else that's in industry subscribes to our site just for the film room. We have the Dynasty Nerds film room, so you can literally watch tape on all these rookies, and they're broken down to just every snap they're on to play. So you can watch an entire game in 5 minutes of that player.
Right.
Our guys who do that do a very good job on it. So Dynasty Nerds film room, you get the nerd score, you get the rankings, you get the GM. So yeah, but the film room is such a great.
I want to underline that for a second. The Dynasty film room, basically, say you want to watch Najee Harris, it shows specific games and it shows every play, even if he was just blocking or going on a route that he didn't catch the ball. You can really watch it. And when I talk about in our Slack chat that, hey, I watched film on him, I'm going to the Dynasty Nerds film room. That's where I get my film from. I'm not going on YouTube watching highlights, sometimes just for entertainment, but that's how you do it. All right, Rich, you've been more than generous with your time. We hope to have you back again sometime this year, whenever time permits. He's Rich
anytime this summer, 100%. We'll get back on after. Maybe we'll talk some rookies after the NFL draft and see who we like and who we don't like landing spots.
Love that. And go check out Rich's newest podcast where he breaks down the tight ends. That one's free. And I like Brevin Jordan. I liked your breakdown on Brevin Jordan, even though what's it called? That you said you guys didn't love him that much, and you liked Pat Vermouth. How do you say? It was Pat Vermouth. Yeah, you liked him a little bit. So go check that one out, guys. That's an enjoyable podcast if you like the tight ends. And we'll be back next time, DFS Army, with another bowl call for Rich Dotson. I'm